Good morning. Today we'll be reading classifications of organisms. You're going to need a highlighter and something else to write with. Let's begin. Reflect. Organization helps us make sense of our surroundings. Some people organize their sock drawers by color. Books in a library are often organized by topic. Food in a grocery store is organized so we know just where to find something. For scientists, organization is an essential tool. The organization of similar organisms into groups helps scientists understand how living things are related. It also allows scientists to communicate about all forms of life. For example, suppose a scientist in the United States writes about a specific group of animals. Other scientists around the world will know exactly which group of animals the writer is referring to. But how do scientists decide which organisms to group together? Do they use a particular process? Scientists classify organisms in different ways. Scientists organize the living world using a process called taxonomy, which is the science of classifying organisms based on shared structures, functions, relationships to other organisms. For example, organisms can be classified based on their cellular structure. Organisms that have nuclei are eukaryotes. Eukaryotes also have organelles, or specialized structures bound in a membrane. They are in a different group than prokaryotes, which are organisms that do not have a nuclei. Quick pause. Which one are you? Are you made up of prokaryotes or eukaryotes? If you said eukaryotes, you are right. Also, many unicellular organisms are in a different group than multicellular organisms. Remember, uni is made up of one cell, whereas multicellular are made up of more than one cell. They are in a different group than animals, which are multicellular. Living things also can be classified according to the way in which they obtain food. Think about the differences between plants and animals. Plants make their own food and are called autotrophs. Animals must consume other organisms and are called heterotrophs. The difference classifies plants and animals into two separate groups. Method of reproduction can be used to classify organisms into even smaller groups. The two main reproductive methods are asexual and sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, only one parent is involved in producing offspring. In sexual reproduction, two parents are involved, a male and a female. What do you think? Take a look at the images below. Which organisms would you group together? Why? What additional information would you need to know about the organisms to improve how you classified them? Scientists classify organisms into three domains. We're getting into the section of the reading where we are going to need to use our definition concept map. So please, you may want to detach that from your packet so we can go back and forth. Scientists use a branching system of classification. The broadest group is the domain. Each domain is subdivided into kingdoms, followed by phyla, class, order, family, genus, species. Remember that mnemonic device that you came up with. We will focus on domains and kingdoms. All living things are classified into one of three domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Let's take a moment and write those into our concept definition map. You're going to need to leave room in each of these boxes to add additional information. So my first domain is bacteria. My second domain in the article said archaea. And my third domain in the article is eukarya. Let's discuss the first domain, bacteria. Domain bacteria, and I'm going to circle it because that's the section for it, includes organisms commonly referred to as bacteria, which are unicellular prokaryotes. They are tiny organisms that reproduce asexually. Some bacteria are autotrophs, which, remember, make their own food, but most of them are heterotrophs, consume their own food. So let's take some of these important descriptors and put them into the concept definition map under bacteria. Bacteria are unicellular. Which typically makes them tiny. They don't have a nucleus, which defines them as prokaryotes. They reproduce asexually, which means they only need one to divide and make more. Bacteria can be autotrophs and heterotrophs. But primarily heterotrophs. You can pause the video to finish filling in your concept definition map for bacteria. Page 3. What do you think? The organisms in domain archaea are a specialized group of unicellular prokaryotes. Scientists discovered these unique organisms living in extreme conditions. Some archaea are found in hot springs and are called thermophiles, which means heat-loving. Other archaea are found in very salty conditions and are called halophiles, which are salt-loving. Similar to bacteria, archaea produce asexually. Some archaea are autotrophs and others are heterotrophs. You might wonder why archaea and bacteria are divided into separate domains. After all, they are both unicellular prokaryotes. In the 1970s, a study revealed that the cellular structure of archaea are so different from bacteria, they deserve their own domain. For example, archaea have a unique plasmid membrane structure not found in any other organism. Let's fill in our concept definition map about information gained about archaea. They are a specialized group. They are unicellular organisms made up of one cell. They do not have a nucleus, so they are identified as prokaryotes. They live in extreme conditions. And they reproduce asexually, only needing one parent. And lastly, they can be autotrophs and heterotrophs. You can pause the video to finish filling in archaea. Our last domain is eukarya. Domain eukarya includes all eukaryotes, which means you. This is a diverse group of organisms. It includes plants, animals, fungi, and protists. These organisms are classified together because they are made up of eukaryotic cells. Characteristics like structure, function, and method of reproduction further classify the organisms into smaller groups called kingdoms. Let's take a moment and fill in eukarya. Eukarya are eukaryotes. Plants, animals, fungi, and protists fall under this category. Most are going to be multicellular. Scientists classify organisms into 6 kingdoms. The 3 domains are further divided into 6 kingdoms. The first 2 kingdoms are easy to remember. Domain bacteria has just one kingdom, eubacteria. So let's fill that in on our chart. So like the article mentioned, the domain bacteria has only one kingdom, and it's called eubacteria. Kingdom archaea also, domain archaea also has just one kingdom, archaea bacteria. Identifying the organisms in domain eukarya is when classification gets more complicated. So let's fill in. Domain archaea only has one kingdom, and that kingdom is archaea bacteria, ancient bacteria is what that translates to. So let's look at this more complicated domain of eukarya. Domain eukarya has 4 kingdoms: Animale, Plantae, Fungi, and Protista. They are classified based on the complexity of their cellular organization, their ability to obtain nutrients, and their mode of reproduction. Organisms in the kingdom Animale are most complex and are commonly referred to as animals. They are multicellular heterotrophs. Most reproduction in this kingdom is sexual, although a few animals can reproduce asexually. For example, if you divide a flatworm in half, each of the 2 halves will grow into a flatworm. Let's head to our concept map and fill in information about the animal kingdom. It's the most complex. Animals are in this kingdom. They reproduce sexually, and most are heterotroph. You may pause the video if you need more time. Page 4. What do you think? In the kingdom Plantae, the organisms are referred to as plants and are very complex. Plants are autotrophs since they make their own food. They are multicellular and can reproduce sexually or asexually. So let's go fill in our plant kingdom. They're complex We'll see plants in this category that make their own food, made up of many cells, and can reproduce sexually or asexually. Kingdom fungi includes organisms such as mushrooms and molds. Most fungi are multicellular and can reproduce sexually or asexually. All fungi are heterotrophs. However, the way in which they obtain food is unique. Fungi absorb nutrients from the environment. Think about a piece of moldy bread. The mold is a fungus that releases chemicals to break down the bread into smaller substances. The mold can then absorb these smaller substances, using them as nutrients. Their characteristics make fungi different from animals. Going back to our concept map, the fungi kingdom. Examples include like mushrooms and mold. They are made up of many cells. They can reproduce sexually or asexually. And they cannot make their own food. Our last kingdom, Protista. Kingdom Protista includes organisms with fairly simple structures compared to other eukaryotes. This is a great diversity among the protists. Most of them are unicellular. However, some protists are multicellular. Some are autotrophs, in which they resemble plants, and other protists are heterotrophs, most closely resembling animals. They swim through the water and consume nutrients from their environment. Their simple organization keeps them in a separate kingdom from plants and animals. Let's fill in their information in the chart. Protist. Simple. Uni and multicellular, as well as autotroph and heterotrophic. You're going to want to refer back to this map, even though we are done filling it in. Back to page 4. Look out! Protists have been the most difficult group of organisms for scientists to classify. Some protists, like green algae, have the photosynthetic pigment chlorophyll. Ooh, we know that gives them a green color similar to plants. Other protists behave more like animals, with whip-like structures that allow them to zoom around in the water. You can think of protists as the other category. They are single-celled organisms with a nucleus, but their structures are too simple to qualify them as plants or animals. Try now. People often say that dogs are man's best friend. How closely related are dogs and humans? To complete this activity, you will need a computer with internet connection, a piece of paper, a pen or pencil, and crayons or markers. Page 5, the try now, well, we're going to need the internet. So for this task, what I'd like for you to do is to open up a new tab on your Chromebook as you listen. We are going to type in the search bar, taxonomy of a dog. And you can click on the Wikipedia link. And as you scroll to the far right, you'll start to see the list of these terms here: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And I have done the research, so I'm going to fill in that information. Dogs are in the Euchera domain and the Animale kingdom. The phylum they are in is the Chordata. The class is Mammalia, Latin for mammals. The order they are in is Carnivora. The family they are in is the Canidae. The genus they're in is the Canis. And their species is Familiaris. Now take the time to look up the human. So put taxonomy of a human. You'll see that this one looks a little bit different in the Wikipedia site, adding a little bit of subclasses and orders to these sections over here. But you should get the kingdom of Euchera, or excuse me, the domain of Euchera, Animale for kingdom. They're in the Chordata phylum, Mammalia class. Their order is primates. Family is Homidae. Genus is Homo. And species is Sapiens. Now that we've researched this information, let's circle classifications that are the same for dogs and humans using one color. And then circle the classifications that are different in a different color. So they both are in the kingdom, or excuse me, domain of Euchera. They're both in the same kingdom of Animale. They're both in the phylum of Chordata. And they're both in the class of Mammalia. That means we're kind of 50% alike because we're each in the first 4 taxonomy levels. Where we start to differ is in the order, the family, the genus, and the species. What does this information tell you about similarities and differences between dogs and people? Take a moment to ponder. Discover science, a changing classification system. The classification system we use today has changed many times over the years as new information was discovered. Swedish scientist Carl Linnaeus is known for creating the first version of the modern taxonomy system in the 1700s. He classified organisms into 2 kingdoms, Animale and Plantae. Years later, as scientists were able to use their better microscopes and observe organisms more closely, they added 3 more kingdoms in the system: Monera, unicellular prokaryotes, Protista, and fungi. In recent years, the classification shifted again and is now the 3-domain system you've just learned about. The new system is based on information from cell studies and the fairly recent discovery of archaea. Do you think the system will change again in the future? If you answered yes, you are probably right. Scientists are always making new discoveries. Some of these discoveries will likely encourage them to rethink the current 3-domain system. Page 6. What do you know? Organisms are classified into domains and kingdoms based on specific characteristics. Take a look at the pictures below and read the characteristics in the boxes. Decide how you would classify each organism into a domain and a kingdom based on the information. Write your answers in the spaces below the pictures. We will do the first one together, and you are going to try to do the rest. So I'm going to need that concept map to help me figure this out. I'm going to look at these bulleted examples underneath this butterfly. You could probably guess some of the domains and kingdoms it might fall under. It's a eukaryote. This is the first sign that I'm going to look for the domain. Which domain only has eukaryotes? Euchera. Now I'm going to look at some other information to figure out what kingdom, and I'm only going to look from the domain of Euchera and the 4 options I have: Animale, plant, fungi, protist. Well, I know they're heterotroph and reproduce sexually. So the only category that is Animale. And I know that because I looked in the section, saw that it is heterotroph and sexually. No other category is like that. All right, your turn to do the rest. and then the cut and paste activity if time. Good luck.